I've got this clipped here and sewn, and then I've cut off my excess on this side, and I'm getting ready to roll this under and iron some more. I have gone ahead and laid the piece I did cut off on my other one, and I'm going to clip that and use that as a guide as I cut. All right, so I have rolled this under, pressed it, and this is what I'm going to sew. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side here. And I almost got the whole tag when I cut that piece off, but I just went back and snipped the little that I hadn't gotten. Okay, so I've got these sides trimmed and rolled, and we'll be sewing those. But before I sew that, because I want to sit at my machine and sew everything, I'm going to work on my straps. Okay, so I've got my material laid out here, and I'm going to iron this all flat before I make my first cut, because I want my material to be nice and flat. And I'm working with the back side of it because I will be marking it where I'm going to cut. Okay, so we need 3-inch straps, and what I'm using is a see-through sewing guide, and so it has the numbers on this side, and then it has the numbers backwards on this side, so what I like to do is then just come up where it says 3, and I'm going to utilize this strip as part of my 3 because it'll be sewn under, and you can do that. And so we've got 3, and it just so happens. So if we were doing a 4-inch strap, just so you know, because it just so happened this is a 6-inch rule, the numbers would not be the same. But because we're doing 3 inches, that's right in the middle on both. And so we want to make sure on both edges so that when we have our spot here, we're straight. So we'll make sure that that's at 3 inches. And in the center here, it's a little low, but once we iron everything, it'll be good. So we'll make sure that's at 3 inches all the way across both sides, and then we're going to mark it. All right, if you remember, we had these wax crayons, China marker, whatever you want to call them, cloth pencil, whatever you want to call them. We have these, and that's what I'm going to use because I'm going to use scissors to cut this straight line, and I can't cut a straight line just from looking at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the line on my straight edge and then cut it. All right, so I have drawn my straight line, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it backwards and iron that line. Again, you won't see this where I cut it, but I'd like to have that straight guide for when I have to cut. And I'm going to start from the center of the fabric and just slide my iron outward. Now you can see I got a little off, so but that's okay because we can just roll it and re-iron it, the crease. So that'll be nice and straight. And we'll do it again. And just re-iron that. Nice and straight. So when we use our scissors, and then I'm going to work the other now. See, I'm way off here. So let me straighten this and just pinch. What I'm doing is I'm going to pinch the fabric and push it back down. I'm focusing on this crease right now, and then what I'll do is iron the other flat before we start any kind of sewing. There we go. Okay, and then what I've done now is I've just flipped this backward again so that I can iron this side of the material. So then I'll have 2 creases I can cut here across this edge, and I've got that line ironed, and then I can cut this one, and I'll have my 2 pieces of material for my strap. Okay, and what I'm doing now is I'm just cutting along that crease, and I've actually just got my scissors laid on their side, running along the ironing board, and it takes a lot of time, but it's the easiest way to get the straightest cut because, like I said, I'm not very good at cutting straight lines. Okay, here are our two pieces, and what we're going to do now is sew them together to make one big long one. And again, I'm going to reverse stitch at the beginning and just sew this real quick. Push my reverse stitch down and then sew a quick straight line. Hard to do with one hand because I'm holding my phone, but that will do the job. Okay, so we've got that sewn together. I'm going to iron this flat and then start folding this and ironing it to where we can make our strap. Okay, and what I like to do is I like to fold, when I have a seam like this, I like to fold it open so that it's not thicker on one side or the other when we sew this all together. So more ironing. Okay, so what we're going to do now is fold this in half in the center and iron our way out as we make sure these seams are meeting. And that must be from my training with doing upholstery. You start in the middle, which you think you would start on one end or the other, but you start in the middle and you work your way out. That's the easiest way to do, to make sure that they're even. Okay, so at this point you should have it folded in half, your long tie, and then we're going to open up again and starting at the center, open it back up after we've sewn, and then we're going to bring in each side to the center and then sew, or excuse me, and then iron. So you'll need to bring this side into that crease you just made and iron, and repeat the same thing on the other side. Okay, all right, we've got one whole side folded again, and then we'll need to do that to this side. Okay, so we've got the other folded. Remember, we utilized this little chunk of material because that's going to be folded under and nobody will ever know it's there unless they watch this video. Okay, so we are ready to take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm gonna work on ironing out my pocket before I want to do all my sewing all at once. So I'm gonna iron out my pocket next. Okay, so this is my apron body where my pocket's gonna go, and I actually put a pin in here. I held this up to my body, and that's where the top of my belt is. So that will give me an idea of how deep I want to place my pocket, because I don't want it, I'm kind of short, very short. I don't want it to where I can't reach the bottom of my pocket. So I don't want the bottom of my pocket to fall further than this. So I'll have a little bit down here and a shorter pocket. Okay, and you can see I've taken my material and I've ironed it in half because I want to have a thicker pocket material. I want to double this up. But what I may do, because mine is a little, I bought a whole yard of material. What I may do is fold this in thirds and have it three pieces of fabric thick, because that won't be too thick. That's what I think I'm gonna do. Okay, so I've folded this into thirds. So this is 3 pieces of fabric thick, and laid on my apron, you can see it still gives me a little area around. I didn't want to just have a weird little scrap of fabric left over, so I'm going to do it this way. Okay, and so I'm folding my pocket over before I cut it so that I can have a nice ironed crease here at 9 inches. So I will then sew a hem on either end before I make my pocket. It's going to be a little bit different than the video because I'm doing 3 pieces. Okay, so I've cut my pocket material out, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it back up and iron a little hem on there on both edges, because you can see this one needs to be trimmed as well. It's a little frayed after I washed it, but that's why we wash it beforehand. Always wash your fabric beforehand. Okay, and this is a little trick that I'm going to use so that I have the same amount folded up on both sides. I'm not using the elastic. I'm not putting elastic in this. I'm just going to use this as a guide so that when I roll it up on this end, it'll be the same length as when I roll it up on this end. Just so that I can have a flexible straight edge, because all my other straight edges are kind of difficult to deal with on the ironing board. Okay, so you can see this is how I used this one, just so I could have a guide. Okay, so we've got these both ironed flat so that we can get these to the sewing machine, and I think I'm ready to sew now. Okay, so I've got my yellow thread and my yellow bobbin, and I'm gonna set my camera up and start sewing. All right, so I'm gonna start on my edges of my pocket, and I'm just gonna keep that right on the 0 line is my plan. And this is going to be folded up and resewn, so I'm not going to reverse stitch right here. Okay, so now we're going to work on the strap. So I've got my strap in here, and I'm actually starting at the center so that I can work my way out. That's just a preference of mine. So this is my strap, and I did right down the middle, and now I'm coming back and sewing right on the edge because I just wanted to give it a little extra decoration. I really like that yellow thread too. Okay, so I sewed the towel itself, remembering not to keep going around the edge so that I will have a little tunnel here. On this side, I did sew all the way up, and I like how that looks better on the front. So if you look at the front of the towel, that goes all the way up. So I'm gonna sew just for decoration's sake on that side as well. All right, now I'm gonna iron my pocket and sew the top and the bottom another stitch before I sew it onto the apron, just to give it some decoration. Okay, so here is my pocket. I've got, well, that's the back of it. Sorry about that. So I've got 2 lines here and 2 lines here. And then when I sew it on, I'm gonna have 2 lines on the side and then a 3rd line on the bottom. 2 lines on this side. And then I think I'm gonna just keep one big pocket. And if I like to divide it, I'll divide it later, but I think right now I'm just gonna do one big pocket. Okay, I've got the pocket sewn on, and I'm gonna thread in my strap. Okay, now y'all get to see me. I've got my apron on. It's one big pocket. I'm loving it. It was not easy to thread this through, so just be prepared for that. That's not gonna be the easiest thing in the world to do, but here I am with my apron. All right, so we've got the finished apron here. I thought the easiest way to see it would be to lay it on the couch. It is difficult to thread the strap through. It takes a little bit, even with a chopstick. So just be prepared for that. And then I was gonna zoom in and show you, I did go all the way to the end with my gold thread and all the way to the top on both sides with my gold thread so that it would accent it. And I've got one big pocket, which I like the sturdiness of that. Okay, so I hope y'all enjoyed watching me flounce around and make that apron. I quite enjoyed it. I do think that I'm probably going to go back and make another stretch of strap just so that I can have a longer strap for myself, because I think that would be more convenient for me. But the fun thing is you get to make it your own. So enjoy!